You're watching Open Agenda. Here's our host, Joe Venosa.
Welcome to Open Agenda. This week we are joined by Ms. Trish Melvin from Fruitland.
Hello.
Hello. And Mr. Joe Scafino, my neighbor from Salisbury. And we have an episode specifically focused on the last City Council meeting because, as anybody who has heard of the recent events will know, that really issues of election reform and the appointment process continue to sort of dominate the discussion and the discourse. And so what I'd like to do, if it's okay, is I'd like to bring Michael Langford in first and get his thoughts on what transpired at the meeting, because there were some out-of-towners who came in to speak about election reform and specifically ranked choice voting. And then I'd like to bring you back in, Trish, to sort of get your analysis of what happened at the February 2nd City Council meeting this past week.
Okay.
Sound good?
Sounds good.
All right, Joe, you going to stick around for us?
I'll be here.
Thank you, sir. All right. Hang on, and we'll be right back with our next segment of Open Agenda. Welcome back to Open Agenda. So with us in the studio is Mr. Michael Langford and Mr. Joe Scafino. Thank you for being here.
Yep.
So,
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, all the time. So we had quite a meeting this past week at City Council. And obviously, the big issue that seems to be recurring the last few weeks is election reform, and I guess theoretically the appointment process, although that kind of appears to be a little bit on the back burner, but maybe we can explore that. So can you give us, Michael, a sense of what actually happened at the meeting broadly, and then we can kind of break it down?
So I guess the two politically active groups, groups that organize politically locally, Shore Progress and Crabs on the Shore, brought in another nonprofit, which is a lobbyist agency called Ranked Choice Voting Maryland. You can look up on the state website. They are a registered lobbyist with the state. Okay. And after their meeting across the street, then they came over to the council meeting.
Hello, my name is Michelle Whitaker. I'm the executive director for Ranked Choice Voting Maryland. We are a statewide organization that is focused on helping to empower voters to have strong elections and working with cities, counties, and our state to improve our elections and to make sure that everyone feels that their voice is counted. We've seen this in New York City. We've seen it in Minneapolis. We've seen it in the Bay Area. We've seen it in Portland, Maine, Portland, Oregon. As someone who really values the democracy and making sure that every vote is counted and every voice is heard, the other benefits include representation and making sure that you can have more women, more people of color, more diverse voices, a whole spectrum of ideology or perspectives in the community represented when you have that, when you have ranked choice voting. And we've seen this across the country with places that have used it. In Maryland, Tacoma Park has been using ranked choice voting since 2007. Greenbelt just voted in November to move towards ranked choice voting, and we're going to be working with them on implementation. We'd love to talk to you, the city, about the opportunities there.
And then some guy, several young people in their 20s, one of which admitted he was from Snow Hill. There's a woman that lives outside the city limits who chose to speak in favor of it. But we had a lot of people that weren't actually active players that showed up to speak in favor of this.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Chase Phillips. I live in the town of Snow Hill, so I am not a city resident. I serve as the Worcester County lead for the Maryland Forward Party, and Maryland Forward, like the National Forward Party, supports electoral reform, and ranked choice voting is a crucial element of our efforts. And I'm worried that far too many in our communities are simply distraught at the system that are the system we use today. And this is why I support ranked choice voting. I'm Generation Z, and my generation is defined by political turmoil, honestly, and it can be very disappointing at times.
Now, Joe, what do you think about the idea of having a registered lobbyist on this particular issue kind of coming in at local groups' behest? I mean, because theoretically, again, this is an issue that's important to people, so what would be an issue with that, if any? What do you think?
I guess as far as educating people, it might have some value. But again, it's an issue that's not appropriate for Salisbury. Ranked choice voting is primarily done in primaries, where you have crowded field. In a two-party system, 99% of the elections in our country and local are two people. So in a general election, you're not gonna, it's not gonna even fly. It's a primary. So, and because we have nonpartisan,
Yeah.
you know, and I like I said, we did research. So in the last decade, 5 council seats in the mayor. So 18 elections, 5 of them had 3 candidates. Okay, 3 of them, the winner got over 50%. 1 got over 60. In the 4th one, the winner got 48%, which is pretty darn close to majority. The only one was the recent mayor, where he got 38%. And again, the Democratic Party can blame themselves for that one.
Good evening, council members. My name is Jared Shabline. I'm a proud resident of District 3. As many of you all know, I moved 2 years ago from Pittsville to Salisbury. I moved here because I was tired of the toxic politics of my hometown. If you know anything about Pittsville politics, you know what I'm talking about. And inspired by the progress Salisbury was making. But over the past few years, I've watched the same toxicity begin to seep into our city politics, and part of the reason is our outdated election system. Since 2015, Salisbury has had 5 competitive elections in which more than 2 candidates have run for the same seat. In 40% of those races, the candidate who won got less than 50% of the vote.
So is it a question, therefore, then, that this whole effort is really kind of a reaction to the results of the last mayoral election rather than...
I think that's exactly
I
the
absolutely believe that.
Okay,
Absolutely.
In our most recent election, only 18% of registered voters, eligible voters here in the city of Salisbury voted. I've seen all of you, including the mayor who I disagree with about just about everything, face vicious attacks, far more than just agreeing with or disagreeing with policy.
I think that's the problem with our election, current voting system, is that some people don't like the result of it. That's the problem that I think that this is being proposed as a solution, a remedy. And it's just a very kind of short-sighted, we all feel we're right about our political opinions, but
Yeah.
if we don't like the person who got elected, I mean, the appropriate stance for anyone actively involved in politics is to want to see that person succeed
Yeah.
and represent us the best they can.
Right. And again, full disclosure, I myself worked for a good amount of time on one of the last mayoral candidates' campaigns, one of the ones who lost. And I can tell you that there was never a discussion about ranked choice voting, at least among that group of people, or in the city, that I've ever heard of substantially until the last few weeks, really.
I also did not
Is that-
vote for the current mayor, but like
Yeah,
I still
I
want to
didn't-
see, the city do well,
Yeah, yeah.
you know?
Well, and I guess the question becomes, why is it that ranked choice voting has become such a prominent issue of discussion when so much of the actual community concerns, as were mentioned by some council members, was the appointment process? Like,
I do think election reform and appointment process, when I think appointment process, I think in terms of filling a vacancy on the council. My 2 thoughts. Number 1, even after reading this, I think we're dealing with something, when we're talking about election reform, I think we need to address why the voters aren't turning out first. 18.2% is absurd as far as turnout.
it seems that it's sort of being at best linked up as a dual issue, when really it's only about the appointment process that there was a lot of substantial concern.
I think it's that Orwellian, political doublespeak again, rearing its head that you often bring up, right? Because at first it's about the appointment process. Then we start talking about, election reform, which can be an umbrella term that would encapsulate the appointment process being reviewed. But now we're suddenly talking about voting systems, ranked choice voting, which is a completely different aspect of election reform. So I think there's this conflation of we're addressing your complaint in a way that you did not ask us to address. That's very
right.
disingenuous.
We'll solve a problem that you never brought up before on your behalf.
Well, I think, first of all, the appointee process needs to be taken care of as soon as possible. We do not know what's going to happen down the road in the next year or two. We don't know. So we need to get something in place. So if it does happen, I can't say it will, I can't say it won't, but we need to have a process in place just in case it does happen. we're not as big as New York. We're not as big as Minnesota. We're not as large as Michigan. Yeah, they have that many people that could go and run in one election or oppose somebody. They have people who run like 5 and 6 and 7 and 10. We never have that. I've been watching the elections since I was like 10 years old. We have never had that.
As far as I agree with April, right now I'm interested in the appointment process. I think that needs to be done immediately. Election reform, again, I have not heard it. However, I stand firm with the appointment process needs to be looked at. And at this moment, I'm not interested in election reform.
Would you want the appointment process on the ballot? Is that what I heard?
No.
No, you want
that
it like
needs to be
now?
done immediately.
And-
I feel that the election reform, ranked choice voting, or whatever that is, that could be a ballot issue and let the citizens decide. But the appointment process, we need to begin that immediately.
Yes.
I agree.
Let me ask you this, though. Now, and again, this is something that I personally, at least theoretically, am generally supportive of the idea of, well, why don't we at least put it as a ballot measure? Like, let's let the voters decide in the next election, do you want ranked choice voting? And again, I understand and I agree that it really is something that makes much more sense in a partisan primary. And I'm thankful that we don't have partisan primaries. Right. And I certainly hope that we keep it that way. But what do you think of the idea of just allowing it to be on the ballot and letting people vote either yes, let's go for it, or let's keep it the way it is?
Well, number one, I'm not sure how to get it on the ballot. Now, Bob Taylor, who knows more about this stuff than I do, says that it may not be able to be a ballot, and we'd have to look that up.
I didn't come to speak about ranked choice voting, but I've heard all the platitudes, and I see that the lobby group is here for it tonight. I don't think it will do anything to cut down animosity politically in the city. Anybody that thinks so, I've got some ocean property in Kansas. I'll be glad to sell you. Thank you.
We traditionally, in the last 3 elections, we had 22%, 18%, and 17% participation. So, again, you're going to have, at best, 1/5 of the electorate make this decision. Mm-hmm. It should be up to the legislative body.
I think that here's the thing that I think is funny is I think that these people pushing ranked choice voting don't understand that you can still cast a valid vote and it be one vote. So if I go to vote and there's a 3-field candidate and the ranked choice voting, your vote for one and just voting for one person is not disqualified or discounted. So you don't have to rank.
Right.
You can still
Yeah.
just cast a single ballot.
Yeah.
So that's what the majority of people are going to do. That's what's so ironic to me is like, I don't know that, but it's kind of like knowing that people don't even understand how it works on this already.
So-
like they're going to end up with a result where they still end up with the same result. It won't solve the problem.
Eric Adams, in the 2021 New York City Democratic primary, told his voters, only vote for me. Do not rank anybody else. And, that's
what you're going to
the
see.
strategy.
Yeah. So you'll probably have less than 50% of the people, even if we change it to ranked choice voting, whether through the legislative process or through putting it on the ballot and people vote for it, then we wouldn't be ranked choice voting in that next election anyway.
Right.
Which is why I suspect those people won't be happy with that.
This evening, I'd like to talk about ranked choice voting and the limitations of the tool. A voting system is a tool, and whatever problem that you have, you don't always use the same tool. You don't use a hammer to fix every problem. Everything isn't a nail. So I guess one of the things, primarily ranked choice voting is primarily used effectively as a tool to narrow for primaries and partisan elections, to narrow the field when you have a ton of candidates. So like when we had the presidential election in 2015, in the beginning of the field for the Republicans, there were like 16 people or something. That's when you use ranked choice voting, so that people can unify when there's a partisan, around their partisan divide, right, for partisan elections. The city elections are not partisan elections. We don't need that for that. The only problem that I can identify with our current voting system is that during elections that some people, and it is some, don't like the outcome of the last election. Not a majority, or else we would have a different mayor. So in reality, our local government doesn't have a voting system problem. It's a lack of good faith and civic engagement. There are people who live here, as I do, ought to want the city to do well regardless of who's at the helm. For the record, I didn't vote for the current mayor, But I still would like to see the current mayor and my district representative, City Council President Angela Blake, do well. I want them, unlike some other people with their disingenuous fair voting systems, I'd like to see the good capable being done by the people who are temporarily in positions of power, because that is the system. People love that. So if you go to fairvote.org, which is a ranked choice voting pro site, they said only 18 places used it in 2025. In the United States, there's over 19,000 incorporated places in the United States. So if you look at like elections out of that, it's less than 1% of 1%. It's 0.0009 people that are using in the United States. So it's like, it's this whole disingenuous move to present this as a normal thing when really only like 18 places in 2025 used it out of hundreds of elections.
Yeah, I think I'm for a rude awakening regardless.
Yeah,
right
but
now.
then even if they did pass it beforehand, it's like, fine, do that. But you're going to find most people just cast one ballot.
Well, and I'm sorry.
Yeah, and like I said, if you look at the last 3 elections, 5 out of 18 had more than 2. Several only had 1 candidate. So again, it's a solution in search of a problem in Salisbury.
But let me say one more thing about this whole thing. I think a lot of this want, for lack of a better term, to kind of talk about ranked choice voting, manipulate use. I mean, there's only 18 cities in the nation that use them. Is this polarization of politics, and not of ones that matter at the municipal level. I mean, I know there's national politics, ICE and gay pride and all that goes on with it. But at the municipal level, we're balancing balance sheets, we're balancing income, we're investing in parks, we're doing roads, we're doing we're doing the work of cities. 27% of the city kids and people in this country in this city live under the poverty line. 75% renters. That's a vulnerable population, and we don't really have the luxury of dealing at the national level and finding divisions to find our candidate in the pool at the expense of doing a great job managing this city for the benefit of those people. And that's where I guess I get a little fired up that we allow that to be a marquee. It's selfish and politically a little weird, I got to be frank, at the municipal level.
But do you think this kind of speaks to the thing that we often talk about on the show, is that there are people that are just so embedded in their silos and are so reactionary to any issue that they're going to take up a cause or position because that's what their in-group supports, right? So people are upset about the last mayor election because there were ostensibly 2 Democrats and 1 Republican. Mm-hmm. The Republican won. And therefore, now there's this push to maybe prevent that again. I guess what I'm asking is there an argument we can make that it's a genuine concern, or is it only a partisan gripe at this point? And again, I say that as somebody who did not vote for the current mayor.
Right.
In Salisbury, it's a partisan gripe.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah. I haven't seen a single person from across the political divide who's in favor of it.
That's even brought it up outside of this group.
It's not like it's ubiquitous amongst Democrats, but everybody is left leaning who's in favor of it for sure.
Okay, interesting.
But and again, I like to do my research. I don't want to be off the cuff. And again, just because I'm saying it's not appropriate in Salisbury, it's obviously appropriate in New York City in primaries where you have 4 or 5 candidates.
It's a tool.
So, I went to a website, fairvote.org, which is actually based in Silver Spring, Maryland, and their thing is election reform, and they have polls and a majority of Americans want to see election reform. And we're talking at the national level and the state level. Mm-hmm. The problem is there are entrenched special interests that don't want to see election reform. Mm-hmm. And just touching on ranked choice voting again, on this website, they have a lot of good information. Again, it's fairvote.org. So if any of our viewers want to check it out, I invite them to. But they mention these countries that use proportional ranked choice voting, and they had United Kingdom, Australia, New Zealand, Malta. Yeah. And what I suspected, I looked up, and they all have like 8, 10, 12 political parties.
Yeah, well, they're parliamentary democracies.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Whereas we only have 2.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. So again, it seems that this trend of stepping forward on an issue for special interest comes up when there's a particular interest group that feels like they can make hay out of something. But of course, all of the things we've been discussing may be a moot point because it seems like the city council doesn't even have the votes to push it through.
Yeah, I suspect that I suspect this might the tone of the conversation will change over the next month or two. Well, it'd be interesting to see where they take it.
Yeah, and again, to kind of show the irony of the partisanship, there's at least one, possibly two Democrats on the council, Melissa Holland and April Jackson, who don't seem inclined to push for ranked choice voting, and of course the one Republican, Sharon DeShiel. So it kind of goes against even what some of these special interest groups might be wanting from their own perhaps partisan consensus.
I think when you are exactly what Joe said about a solution in search of a problem, I just think that it's a real tell about what people, we can't know specifically what people desire without them saying it, but if people are, walking funny, then you can kind of tell there's a hole there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's their thing with their desire. It's very obvious reach when the constituents, again, the only thing that people have actually brought up in this town is the appointment process. That's the thing that needs to be reformed because everybody agreed that right and on the left, I've heard people bipartisan support for a nonpartisan issue of it's not fair for people that don't live in a district to pick the district representative.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense to people in a very basic way.
And I give Melissa Holland a lot of credit because she's kind of spearheading that.
Yeah. And full disclosure, I had the opportunity to speak with her very briefly at a NAACP meet and greet not too long ago, and I straight up apologized to her. I said, "Listen, I want to say that I misjudged you in the sense of I thought that you being appointed would mean that you really wouldn't have an independent voice." And you have proved me wrong, and I'm grateful for that. And I hope you continue to look at the issues based on the facts, let the facts drive you, and let the constituent concerns be the thing that motivate all the changes that we hope to make. So
it's funny. I pretty much said the same thing to her after one
did you?
of the meetings.
Well, great minds think alike.
Well,
that's good.
And isn't it a relief when we can change our minds and feel like that's a good thing?
Facts change, my opinion changes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I don't let my opinion get in the way of the facts.
Right.
So
Exactly.
which too many people are doing.
Well, let's see how this plays out. Obviously, this is a dialogue that's evolving, and certainly future city council meetings are going to address, hopefully, both things to some extent.
Yeah.
Where it goes, again, we shall see. But I'd like to bring back Trish Melvin to sort of get her take on it as a Fruitland resident and sort of see it. So we'll be right back with our next segment of Open Agenda. Welcome back to Open Agenda. Back with us in the studio is Miss Trish Melvin from Fruitland. Hello, thank you. So we had, I think, quite a discussion about what transpired at the city council meeting. Again, it seems that these issues of both election reform and the appointment process have kind of been sort of zombie issues, and I think to some extent for good reason because they are important. But what do you make of this whole situation where at this last meeting, you had some outside groups, or at least speakers from outside groups that were kind of prodded by some local interest groups to make their point specifically about ranked choice voting. What's your take?
I see two things going on. There's the discussion about the merits of ranked choice voting, which, I was, when I first read about it, I thought it was a very positive idea.
Okay.
Now, whether it's practical, that's another discussion.
Yeah.
But aside from the discussion about the merits of that method, there's also, we should discuss the process of how it came about.
Yeah.
I understand that we had some lobbyists and people that really weren't from the district. And so I don't understand, I just don't understand that process of having the lobbyists come in.
Well, I guess, but to take sort of that side of the argument for now, let's play devil's advocate. I guess the argument is that these are people that have experience and are advocates for ranked choice voting, so they could be better equipped to explain the benefits of it. And I guess that was the theory of why they were invited in. And so, again, from their perspective, that's probably what they would say, right? Is here people. But again, I think this goes back to why is it happening now in this way? Why does there seem to be such a push for it? after what we've seen happen. Is that?
One thing I've noticed is just couching the discussion as reform. So just by, well, first we had a discussion about the appointment process,
Right.
and the residents spoke out vocally about that.
Yeah. Local
And-
residents.
Local residents, and particularly in that district. And then, so that kind of became a discussion of election reform. But then over time, it became election reform and ranked choice voting, or the
Yeah.
appointment process and election reform as two separate things.
Yeah.
And just by calling it reform, having the lobbyist come in and discuss it as a reform, it makes you feel like you're doing something wrong today. That's the impression I get.
Yeah, that's an interesting take on it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think? Like just about how it being framed like that.
Again, as I said earlier, I don't see a problem with the lobbyist. I think Mike Langford at the meeting said, it shouldn't be the council people's job to educate the voters because there's a bias. It should be someone outside. So like you said, Trish, they have the experience, they can explain it better. So I don't see an issue with that.
I guess, the question becomes, for how long is the council going to just sort of play hot potato with this? Because this is not a they're not trying to pass the 1964 Civil Rights Act here. This is not a gargantuan issue of historic importance in the sense of what it actually takes. The council can vote on some of these things, and it seems like there's a stalling tactic, or at least that's how it seems to me for some of it.
It's getting dragged out.
It's getting dragged out, right.
And again, like Mike said, you're a legislative body, legislate. Make a motion, see what happens. If there's support for it, you discuss it. If there's not support for it, it's done. Move on.
I get the sense, and again, this is just my perspective, that the groups, be they Shore Progress or Krebs on the Shore, I think they expected to have more progress on this issue when Melissa Holland was appointed. I think they were expecting to have 3 votes to push it through, and now that it appears they don't, they're kind of rallying the troops to address this issue.
I don't disagree with the issue.
Yeah.
I disagree. They've picked the wrong community for it. It's not appropriate for Salisbury. If they took it up with the state delegate thing, Barry Beecham was appointed.
Right.
Okay? There's a case where they can bring in this ranked choice because there's primaries in the delegates.
Yeah, they're partisan.
So, in my opinion, that's where they should be bringing this.
That's the thing. I've never seen a municipality of our size ever engage in ranked choice voting for non-partisan elections.
Exactly.
And I think, and this speaks to, I think, the political maneuvering that some groups are trying to do, is they are upset about how the last election played out. They're to some extent maybe trying to relitigate it in a sort of way. And, again, that's my view of it. Maybe I'm wrong. And to be fair, I do have some friends and neighbors that have advocated for ranked choice voting, and even me, I'm not against it in principle. But I do have a fear that there might be an effort to create both partisan elections and a ranked choice voting, and I think that would be very detrimental to the community, because I think one of the things that has worked well in city government, and we've all been pretty critical of it. That's part of why we do the show. We try to bring awareness to the issues. I do think that having nonpartisan elections is not only a very good thing for the city. I wish the county would do it in all their electoral practices, because I think it allows people to speak to the issues, and it allows them to focus on the candidates more rather than just be with Team Blue or Team Red or whatever.
That's one of the arguments for ranked choice voting, Joe. You're an advocate.
And at the city level, I've heard discussions about having a survey or maybe putting a question on the ballot. Who's going to frame that question and how it's worded?
That's already a dead. Yeah, that got stumped out.
But we have leaders, and like you said, that they can vote on it, and by doing surveys and whatnot, that just drags it out unnecessarily.
I think dragging out is part of it. Yeah.
Go one way or the other.
Go
vote.
for it. Yeah. Yep. Vote.
That's what you're there for.
Yeah.
Mike Langford keeps saying, you're a legislative body. Legislate. Do your job.
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll hopefully see how that plays out in a few weeks, or if we come back in a month and a half and they're still dragging it out. I mean, we shall see.
I know Michael and I are going to be trying to.
Okay. I'll be watching.
All right.
I'll be watching too.
All right.
Thanks for tuning into Open Agenda, and we'll be back with a new episode next week. See you then.
I know what I'm doing, man.